take long at all for Gray to find a new place for his gambling ring. Before I know it, moving day arrives. Not wanting even around and happy to spend time with Gray, I offered to help him and Gray, a Jet, with their stuff. Sarah comes to help as well, though she lets out an exaggerated groan as she stands around the door to the basement alongside Jed and I, waiting for Gray to unlock it. Don't you wish we could skip ahead to the part where we're done moving and can go out to eat? Gray smirks as he swings open the door. Does that have anything to do with the fact that I'll be paying? Perhaps. Sarah chirps. As she starts down the stairs, Jed follows behind her. Thanks in advance. Jed says to Gray as he passes by. Oh, shut up, Gray calls out after him. You help run this business. I shouldn't even include you. Well, I, for one, am happy to be giving help instead of accepting it for once, I say. I take this moment to cozy up to Gray before we have to venture downstairs and rejoin our friends. Even without you bribing me with food, I'd want to do this with you. Oh, I can think of plenty of things I'd prefer you to do with me instead. Gray wraps his arms loosely around my waist, tugging me to him. Maybe we should put that imagination to the test then. I should back. I can't help but smile as I see my teasing start to affect Gray's expression. You better head downstairs before I carry you upstairs instead. His voice is a low growl. And what would you do to me? Up there? I ask, as innocently as I can manage. I break out into giggles when he simply sighs in exasperation. Your trouble, Gray says with a shake of his head. And you love it. You can't argue with me there. The two of us join Sarah and Jed, already packing poker chips and wrapping liquor bottles up to keep them from breaking. Gray freezes as he sees Sarah handling the items directly connected to his illegal gambling ring. Sarah brushes off his obvious concern when she catches him staring. Jed told me about what you guys were really actually up to down here. Can't say I'm too happy with the fact you put Hazel in danger, but I'm glad you're leaving now. Gray's focus moves to Jed, who is equally dismissive of Gray's unspoken accusation. Well, you brought Hazel down here once, so I figured it would be alright if I told Sarah. Hazel owned this building, Gray argues, but Sarah is her best friend and my girlfriend, Jed says, standing his ground. Why would she do anything to jeopardize people she cares about? I don't want to keep things from her if I don't have to. While Gray struggles to think of a response, Sarah stretches up on her toes to give Jed a kiss. Quite the collection of booze you guys racked up before drinking was banned, I point out. I note the large amount of partially full glass bottles still left to be packed away, wanting to change the subject. Guessing you guys didn't have the proper permits for these either, I tease. That would be a safe guess, he says sheepishly, rubbing the back of his neck. How often do you like to drink? I ask. I make conversation as we start wrapping the bottles, wanting to enjoy the time we have to talk. It's hard to say. Whenever the right occasion arises, I guess. I wouldn't turn down a beer most days, but I like being sober enough to keep a clear mind, Gray replies thoughtfully. Don't get me wrong, I've had my fair share of drunken misadventures, he says, flashing me a grin. But less so these days. I'm starting to prefer just pouring the drinks. It's been fun playing bartender on poker nights. What about you? Gray asks. Though he's simply turning the question around onto me, my drinking habits aren't something I often put into words. Yeah, similar to what you said, a glass of wine in moderation and social drinking with friends every now and then. We should get a drink together sometime, Gray says, wiggling his eyebrows. I smile in response. I'd like that very much. How about you come over to my place after dinner then? Your place? I repeat. It dawns on me that I've yet to visit. Yeah, that sounds great, I say, as nonchalantly as I can muster. Though I try to keep my tone even, the idea of being alone with Gray at his apartment sounds positively thrilling. Get a room, you two, Sarah says with a wink. We're like 10 feet away from you. I don't need a room. I have a whole building, I joke. I look around the basement for a pillow-like object I can lob in her general direction. No such luck. I settle for sticking my tongue out at her instead. Now stop eavesdropping or I'll kick. The four of us burst through the door to Sammy's, famished after packing game equipment, alcohol, and furniture into Gray's car and dropping it off at their new place. Should I order 2 burgers or one with a milkshake and large fries? Sarah wonders out loud. Milkshake and fries, Jed answers. We'll get 3 burgers and share it all. That's a great idea. You're the best. Sarah squeals. She and Jed move towards the register to place their joint order. Should we do the same? I ask, turning towards Gray. If you'd like. A hint of smile plays across his lips, making me curious as to what he's thinking right now. What's got you feeling so amused? Hanging around Sarah and Jed with you just feels very couple-y. He ruffles my hair affectionately with one hand. Is that such a bad thing? I place my hands onto my hips in mock outrage. I wouldn't go that far, he replies. His grin widens as I start to pout. I'm just not used to it. My previous relationships had a different kind of dynamic, and I can't say I've witnessed this much with my friends either. Jude is the first. Even isn't the affectionate type, I joke. I instantly regret bringing him up during a perfectly pleasant outing. Nah, his girls don't stick around long. I can't say I've even met most of them, Gray remarks honestly. Ignoring the sour taste in my mind, I find all of us I found us I find us all a table and sit down while our food is ordered. Right as we start to dig into our meals, Craig clears his throat. Thanks for helping me out today, everyone, he says. Thanks for the food, Sarah replies. She gives him a thumbs up in between bites. It seems crazy that you guys won't be coming by anymore, I confess. I look pointedly at Gray and Jed as the latter reaches for some fries. Yeah, I'm sorry to leave. I'll miss coming in and getting to see Sarah occasionally, Jed says. I'll miss having you and Gray around, I say sincerely. My nights are going to seem so uneventful now that I'm the sole occupant of my building. You'll miss me the most, right? Gray says, winking at me. Does it have to be a competition? I joke. I feign a sigh when he readily nods in response, then seizes the opportunity to tease him. Well, Jet's sewing skills have come in handy quite a bit. The look on Gray's face brings me way too much pleasure. I almost feel guilty. I recall showing you plenty of skill and teaching you a lot of things down in the basement when you expressed interest in my business, Gray says, emphasizing certain words subtly. I feel my face heat up as I recall the game of strip poker Gray and I played, as well as what we did afterwards. Like what? Sarah asks, taking a bite. She seems obviously to my growing embarrassment. Gray smirks at me before turning to speak to the others. Remember playing Dragon Den? He asked innocently. Running a table with Hazel and Jed was kind of fun. Jed snorts. I thought you hated being the den master. That session was a complete catastrophe. Maybe the four of us should play together sometime. I'd like to see a train wreck in action, Sarah says, her tone light and happy. Sure, but let's have Jed try being the den master next time. Then I can ride off into the sunset with Sarah's character. Gray appears to be only half joking. Speaking of riding off, remember the bumper cars at the carnival? I ask. I remember that night fondly, at least, until Gray and I almost ran into people from my past. That was so fun, Sarah agrees. I remember some of the rides that night were too intense for Hazel, Gray says. He gives me a pat on the head, grinning as I glare at him. That's funny. I could say the same thing about you, I retort, promptly shutting him up. I like going to the movies all together, Jed offers. And what about the time Hazel and I followed you two around the city and into the shop? That was hilarious. Sarah starts to crack up just thinking about our failed reconnaissance mission, but I shake my head in shame. That was so embarrassing, I groan. As the four of us continue to reminisce, I can't help but notice how many of the group's best memories feel tainted for me. In so many of them, I was struggling to keep the truth of my past from Gray, a heavy burden that casted a cloud over what was otherwise a clear sky. Lying to him was such a mistake. I feel bolstered in my resolve to not do so again. After finishing up dinner and parting ways with Sarah and Jet, Gray takes me up to his apartment for the first time. Not too bad for a criminal, you must admit, Gray teases as we walk in. His one-bedroom apartment is in one of the pricey areas of Indakapo territory, and the higher rent is evident in the overall condition and quality of the appliances. It's certainly nicer than what I imagined, I say, impressed by how clean everything looks. And what was that? Something adjacent to a jail cell or a shack of some sorts? Gray smirks. Nah, I wouldn't go that far. Some strange woman's basement, perhaps. I just. Well, that arrangement has worked out for me well before. I laugh before I resume taking stock of his place. Apart from the neatness, Gray's place follows the Backler's Pat's stereotype closely. It's quite minimalist overall. I don't spot anything without a practical purpose. The sparse furnishings he does own are somewhat plain in design, though the door to his bedroom and bathroom are currently shut. I would expect these themes to continue throughout the home. Gray takes a seat on his sofa, gesturing for me to do the same. What's on your mind? You got kinda quiet at dinner, he says, looking concerned. I let out a long sigh. Oh, I'm sad about the happiness we missed out on because of me trying to hide who I was in high school. Everything would have been so much better if I hadn't been so scared, so selfish. Gray takes my hand into his, rubbing his thumb across the back of my hand. I get it, Hazel. I really do. As frustrated as I got that you felt you couldn't be honest with me, I would have been tempted to do the same thing if I were you. Really? I ask. I feel doubtful his words go beyond trying to comfort me, so I'd love if there was at least some truth to them. It sounds so nice for my actions to be understood, accepted even. Relationships are hard. I don't know anyone who hasn't been ghosted their fair share. I know you didn't always have feelings for me, but I could imagine that as you developed them, you became scared of losing me. His fingers continue to stroke my hand, the comforting feeling in alignment with the warmth of his words. Scared of how I would react to our past if I found out. If I never wanted to speak to you again, it's not like you could just get rid of me. I was renting your basement and known to blast my music on occasion just to be petty. Gray jokes. His humor causes my frown to lift somewhat. It's true that at some point all I could think about was that I didn't want to lose you, I admit. I hate that my fear almost brought that into fruition. Give me some more credit, Gray says firmly, shaking his head. I wasn't about to walk away. I could see you were really trying then and how you're making an effort to be better now. You really think so? I say, desperate for reassurance. Of course. Remember the other night when you told me about calling the police on me as a teenager? That was certainly something I'm sure you were tempted to keep secret. Yeah, I say slowly. I want to try to grow together in our relationship. When maintaining a lie was my main priority, it seemed like that stunted things between us so severely. Thinking about how things used to be brings on a crease between my brows. Things will be different now. Gray guides me closer, bringing my hand to rest against his chest. You can just focus on yourself, Raindrop, and on spending time with me. You don't have to worry about my poker business affecting you, or even hanging around, or the gang rivalry. We can be together. He strokes my hair gently as he speaks. But you have to worry about even and your gambling ring, I point out. That's not much better. That's my problem to deal with, he says with finality. His words leave me feeling shut out. I sit up, unhappy with this idea of this dynamic in our relationship moving forward. Gray, I know you want me involved as little as possible, but it can feel like you're intentionally keeping things from me, which is exactly what I don't want either of us to do. I'm not comfortable being left in the dark about what's going on between you and him, I insist. Though I plead with him to open up to me, Gray grimaces, still appearing reluctant to share. I don't want you to look at me differently. There's a lot from my past I'm not proud of, particularly during the period right after my stint in juvie. That's okay, I say, reaching out to him. I don't need the details. How about just the big picture? I had trouble finding a job after juvie and getting kicked out of school. No place is really interested in hiring you if you couldn't even finish high school, he scoffs. I was doing less than savory things to get by when I met Even again. Nothing violent or anything like that. Still white collar, fraud type stuff, but let's just say you'd approve of it much less than poker. Even wasn't involved with the same stuff that I was, but he came to know about it. He gathered proof of what I was up to behind my back. When I tried to talk to him about leaving you alone and me quitting our pokering, he brought it to my attention that acting out of line would be my detriment. Gray's hands ball up into tight fists. This could land me in actual jail, Hazel. When I told you I had some personal things to deal with a few weeks ago, after Even started threatening you and Raindrop, this was what I was dealing with. I need to get leverage or some kind of advantage. I want the ability to walk away without needing to watch my back. Thank you for telling me all this, I say. I make sure to give Gray a reassuring smile to let him know I still feel the same about him, that everything is alright between us. We can get past this, no problem. Is my dark past not scaring you off? Gray raises an eyebrow, and I sense some amount of genuine concern in his otherwise light tone. Nah, it doesn't change much for me. I'm not a fan of illegal activity, but being a gang leader has certainly acquainted me with all types of people and the various reasons they do all types of things. I like who you are, Gray. I don't have to like everything you've ever done, as long as we have similar goals and values now. I start to speak more hesitantly. That doesn't mean I want to be someone with a legitimate job that isn't surrounded by treacherous people. I know that's what you're working towards, and I want to help you deal with even to achieve it. Gray looks at me intensely, concern and fear written all over his face. He's not someone you should be around, Hazel, and I don't like how he spoke to you at the poker game you sat in on. Promise me you'll let Jed or I know if he shows up at Raindrop again. I shudder at that thought of another unexpected visit. I promise, I say readily, though I won't hesitate to defend myself or my business after I send word. Gray frowns as I threaten physical action. I know you fare pretty well in a fight, but I hope you do whatever you could to not let it come to that. You know, even plays dirty, you could seriously be hurt. I sigh, wanting to argue, but knowing that self-preservation is probably the smartest thing I could do. Worst case, if things go physical, I have a better shot than most. I could manage to flee, at the very least. A short moment of silence befalls us. This isn't really what I imagined my first visit to your place would be like, I say finally. Oh, Gray asks. He seems to perk up instantly, his interest clearly piqued. What did you picture happening? I don't know. My fingertip traces the veins along the inside of Gray's forearm. I'm glad we had this conversation. I feel closer to you, but I guess in my head I imagined us getting closer in other ways. I look up at Gray through my lashes, inviting him to come closer. Like this. Gray cups the side of my face with his palm before leaning in to the kiss. Yeah, I say, feeling somewhat breathless as his lips leave mine. Definitely the type of thing I had in mind.